On the 10th of January 2025, the Northern Territory's Labor opposition leader Selena Uibo posted to Facebook.
Great to see the CLP government carrying forward the vital cost of living support introduced by the previous Labor government. Labor understood how challenging this time of year can be for families. That's why we invested $6 million in Budget 2024 to provide $100 sports vouchers and $100 Learn to Swim vouchers. Plus, we boosted the annual back-to-school voucher to $200 per child, putting an extra $50 directly into the hands of Territory families. Labor delivers where it counts, supporting families and easing financial pressure.
In her post, Uibo sought to give Labor credit for introducing the sports voucher, the Learn to Swim voucher, and the back-to-school voucher, all in the name of easing financial pressure on families. However, Uibo's claim is almost wholly incorrect, and this video will prove that. Before we begin, it's important to note that vouchers, and who did or didn't introduce them, is insignificant to most Territorians and even tedious, given far more important matters such as the standard of living and safety. However, with Labor's mendacious 8 years in government still a recent memory, it's important that we as Territorians communicate to the Labor opposition that their continuing deceptions, both consequential and inconsequential, are being noticed. Firstly, to the sports voucher. The sports voucher scheme was first introduced to Territorians as a commitment by the Mill CLP opposition ahead of the August 2012 election. After winning the election, the scheme was formally funded and implemented by the Mill CLP government in December 2012 through their mini-budget, with page 105 of the mini-budget noting funding of $5.7 million from 2012 to 2013 for increased peak sport and recreation body grants and the new sports voucher scheme. The December 2012 mini-budget occurred as the new CLP government reached their first 100 days in government. Including the sports voucher in the mini-budget meant that the vouchers could be available for the beginning of Term 1 in 2013, which was the 1st of February. The first round of these vouchers was for $75 for each school-age child per annum. The implementation of the sports voucher scheme was well covered at the time, with the Hansard recording the following. Matt Conlon, then Minister for Tourism and Major Events.
The $75 sports voucher was an election commitment made by this government and one we are determined to deliver on. I am pleased to say the scheme is currently being implemented and Territory school children will be able to use the vouchers from the start of next year. It was a pretty complex exercise to work out how to issue those sporting vouchers, but we have found the right model and they will be delivered in 2013. It is a $4 million investment into the health and well-being of children across the Northern Territory. Under the scheme, registered school children from government and non-government schools will receive the $75 voucher to be used towards registration, equipment and uniforms.
Peter Stiles, then Government Whip and Parliamentary Secretary assisting the Chief Minister.
The department has also been working closely with the Department of Sport and Recreation to support the distribution of the sports voucher scheme. This will be done by utilising efficiencies and existing systems and combining aspects of the back-to-school payment scheme and the sports voucher scheme.
Leah Finocchiaro, then Member for Drysdale.
The mini-budget also contained great incentives such as $75 school sports vouchers.
Some good news for the government with the sports vouchers scheme proving a success. Palmerston Basketball Centre has had a huge boost in numbers since the idea was introduced, and they couldn't be happier.
33% in the Aussie hoops, and we've added another 6 teams in our 10s and unders. I honestly think that's because it's easier for parents to be able to pay for their kids to play.
The government believes its initiative is paying dividends for the younger generation as well as the old.
This is an absolute commitment of our government to invest in grassroots sporting organisations and see increases in juniors getting into sport. And this is proof in the pudding that our policy has worked, and we're incredibly proud.
In May 2013, the scheme was expanded by the Mill CLP government to include ballet and the Scouts. In July 2014, the Giles CLP government increased the sports voucher scheme from $75 per child to $200 per child, and further expanded the scheme. Adam Giles, then Chief Minister.
We have added an extra $5 million to the Country Liberals sport voucher scheme to get more children off the couch and into recreational activities. These vouchers have increased from $75 to $200 per child. We have expanded the scheme to include more activities such as dance, music, arts, and learn-to-swim lessons for children aged up to 5 years.
The sport voucher scheme was expanded, thanks in part to lobbying by then member for Drysdale Leah Finocchiaro.
I was at Sam's dance studio because quite a few mums had lobbied me to have dance included in the sports voucher scheme. I was able to achieve that for them. Following that, we saw the rollout of many more recreational activities being included.
As shown on page 15 and 39 of the 2014/15 budget overview, $5 million was provided for the expanded sports voucher scheme. The following year, the CLP's 2015/16 budget reaffirmed their commitment to the scheme by continuing the new higher voucher amount of $200 per annum per child, as shown on page 16 of the 2015/16 budget, as did the CLP's 2016/17 budget, with total funding provided for the scheme now reaching $7.6 million, as shown on page 5 of the 2016/17 budget. After winning the 2016 Northern Territory election, the Gunner Labor government opted to continue the sports voucher scheme at the full rate of $200 per child per annum. However, in Labor's first budget, they allocated only $6.4 million for the sports voucher scheme, as shown on page 18 of the budget overview for 2017/2018. This is $1.2 million less than the CLP's allocation the previous year, $7.6 million. In subsequent years, Labor's budget allocation for the sports voucher scheme fell even lower, to $5.4 million, which is 28.94% below the CLP's funding. We can attribute a portion of the reduced budget allocation for the scheme to being commensurate with reduced population forecasts. Unlike the CLP, the Labor government did not increase the value of the voucher. Instead, for 8 years, they allowed it to be devalued in the face of inflation. Since the scheme's inception in 2012, 22.65% of the cumulative inflation that occurred in the Northern Territory occurred whilst the Territory had a Labor government. In that time, Labor increased the value of the sports voucher by 0%. Since the scheme's inception in 2012, 8.21% of the cumulative inflation that occurred in the NT occurred whilst the Territory had a CLP government. In that time, the CLP increased the value of the sports voucher by 166.66%. In addition to not increasing the value of the voucher to compensate for inflation, the Labor government also did not expand the range of activities the voucher can subsidise. Despite this, on the 10th of July 2021, the Gunner Labor government still sought to claim credit for expanding the sports voucher scheme to cover music, drama and school swimming. However, as was covered earlier in the video, the scheme had already been expanded by the CLP to include such activities, first by the Mills government in May 2013 with ballet and the Scouts, and then more broadly by the Giles government in July 2014 with music, dance, art and swimming lessons. This is partly why there was no increase in the number of eligible organisations registered for the sports vouchers after Labor made this announcement in 2000 and 2021. In addition to Labor not increasing the scheme and not expanding the scheme, they also moved funds out of the scheme in order to service other commitments. Page 183 of the Territory Families, 2021-22 annual report revealed that the Files Labor government used the funds from unspent sports vouchers, $1.8 million, to fund a public servant pay increase, with the line item stating,
redirection of sports vouchers to meet NTPS bonus costs, $1.8 million.
Minister Kate Warden denied the claim, stating that the money had been diverted to another sporting need, namely the NBL1 Darwin Salties, in order to support the growth of the team.
If we do have money left over at the end of the year, we make sure we prioritise and reinvest into sports across the Northern Territory. For example, we were able to give some extra support to the Salties.
However, the additional grant given to the Darwin Salties in 2023 amounted to only $400,000, leaving $1.4 million left from unspent sports vouchers. In conclusion, the sports voucher scheme was established by the CLP, it was expanded by the CLP, and it has been maintained by the CLP throughout their terms in government, 2012 to 2016, and 2024 onwards. The Gunner Files and Lawler Labor governments continued with the scheme, but they did not introduce the scheme, nor did they increase it or expand upon it. The second matter is the Learn to Swim voucher. Before the 2024 election, the Country Liberal Party were approached by an alliance of water safety organisations such as Royal Lifesaving NT, Surf Lifesaving NT, Swimming NT, Triathlon NT and KidSafe NT, all of whom sought the reintroduction of mandatory swimming lessons. Their previous lobbying efforts at the Labor government had failed. The CLP committed to the policy and have since embedded swimming and water safety into the Territory curriculum as a compulsory component of health and physical education for Year 1 to 6, along with providing $3 million in funding to provide the swimming lessons for all Territory kids at no charge. Royal Lifesaving NT's President Randall Cook.
Embedding swimming and water safety lessons into the curriculum will reduce the incidence of drowning and related injuries among NT children.
The Country Liberal Party has promised to cover the cost of primary school children's swimming lessons if they're elected next month. Under the scheme, all Northern Territory primary school students from years 1 to 6 would be covered for the full cost of their swimming lessons. At the moment, the government reimburses costs for organised sport up to a total of $200. The policy will cost $3 million to implement, and the opposition leader says it can reduce the number of drownings.
By ensuring we have compulsory swimming and water safety lessons for every single Territory child from years 1 to 6 will mean that our kids will be safer in the water.
Under the previous Labor government, 95% of children leaving Year 6 did not have a swimming proficiency at the recognised minimum benchmark for safety, and the cost for swimming lessons from transition onwards was entirely the parents' responsibility. The original Learn to Swim vouchers were introduced by the Giles CLP government on the 14th of May 2014 and were first available from the 1st of July 2014. Under the scheme, parents could apply for two $100 vouchers a year that they could use for swimming lessons for children under the age of 5. The vouchers were provided through the expansion of the CLP's sports voucher scheme. The CLP's $200 Learn to Swim vouchers boosted enrolment in the Royal Lifesaving Society's Water Safety Awareness program by effectively doubling the number of free swimming lessons available. In 2002-2003, the Martin Labor government had accepted the Royal Lifesaving Society's request for a similar, but smaller scheme for children under 5. Through to the late 1990s, the previous CLP government had provided swimming lessons for school-age children, and water safety was embedded in the curriculum. In 2014, when the Learn to Swim voucher scheme was introduced by the CLP, the Executive Director of Royal Lifesaving NT, Floss Roberts, told the NT News,
Since the Water Safety Awareness program began in 2003, more than 9,000 children under 5 have completed the scheme. And now we are looking forward to seeing that number grow even further with today's announcement that parents will be eligible for $200 worth of Learn to Swim vouchers once they have completed the program. I congratulate the NT government for taking such a momentous step to help reduce the rate of child drowning, and I urge all parents to take advantage of the 5 free lessons and new Learn to Swim vouchers to ensure their children learn this vital life skill.
The Gunner Files and Lawler Labor governments continued with the CLP's Learn to Swim voucher scheme, but they did not introduce the scheme, nor did they increase it or expand upon it.
Minister, for 19 of the past 23 years, Labor failed to save our children from drowning. They failed to ensure that our children learnt life-saving water skills in primary school. As a child, I nearly drowned at Wongai Falls. Fortunately, Oswim came to my school, Bachelor Area School, and gave free swimming lessons to the kids there, which taught me to be a confident swimmer. Minister, can you please update the House on how the CLP has delivered on our election commitment to fund free swimming lessons in schools to help prevent children from drowning?
Minister for Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for Blaine for the question, and I know that he is extremely passionate about swimming in schools after his near-drowning experience. I know he joined the Chief Minister in Parliament last week to announce our $3 million Swimming in Schools program to begin for the opposition leader, if you're listening, term 1 next year, which I note, Madam Speaker, she's not listening to the answer, so I'll just repeat, term 1 next year, opposition leader. So the program will see all children in years 1 to 6 develop swimming and water safety skills for free. Government and non-government schools will receive funding to provide free swimming lessons, as well as funding to cover transport costs if required. So no child will miss out, Madam Speaker. For remote schools with limited access to pools, tailored programs will be developed utilising both public and privately owned pools. And I do note that in the opposition leader's electorate, the Territory Manor have come to the party, Madam Speaker, and they are allowing Mataranka school students and nearby students to use their
Opposition
schools.
Leader, we know it's exciting, but
for example, last week I also visited the Discovery Holiday Parks pool in Katherine, which we'll be partnering with to ensure Katherine students have access to a pool while our community pool is out of action. The department is working very closely with Royal Lifesaving NT and has already identified those remote schools that will need extra support and innovative solutions to develop the right program for that school. The member for Blaine spoke about visiting Wongai Falls as a child and getting into trouble because he lacked swimming schools. This is an all too true story in the Territory that could turn into a nightmare for some families. We have an amazing outdoor lifestyle here in the Territory, whether it's visiting our beautiful waterfalls at Litchfield or the hot springs in Katherine, fishing or cooling down just in our backyard pools. Water is a part of the Territory lifestyle. So yet less than 5% of our Year 6 students meet the National Swimming and Water Safety benchmark, which is shameful. What is even worse is the NT has the highest per capita drowning rate in Australia, more than 3 times higher than the national average, which is shocking. And yet for 20 years, we've not had compulsory swimming lessons in the NT, despite swimming and water safety education being a part of the national curriculum. It is not good enough and we must do better.
The third and final matter is the back-to-school vouchers. Unlike the other 2 vouchers, the back-to-school voucher was actually introduced by a Labor government. Under the Martin government, the 2005-2006 budget included a $50 voucher for each school-aged child, with a total program cost of $2 million per annum. In 2008, then CLP opposition leader Terry Mills vowed to increase the back-to-school voucher from $50 to $75, given the cost of living and inflation. In 2010, the $50 back-to-school voucher was increased by $15 to $75 by the Henderson Labor government. In 2015, the CLP Giles government doubled the back-to-school payment from $75 to $150. Then Chief Minister Adam Giles.
We have doubled the Country Liberals' back-to-school payment to $150 per child to further ease the burden on families. The payments help offset the cost of education, such as uniforms, textbooks, stationery, school excursions, and student ID cards.
In 2024, the Lawler Labor government increased the back-to-school voucher from $150 to $200. However, instead of committing new funds for this increase, the additional $2,060,000 required was taken from the Education Department's existing budget. This was after an investigation by the Australian newspaper had shown mass underfunding of education in the Northern Territory, amidst declining results and attendance. In summary, the Henderson Labor government increased the value of the voucher by 50% in 2010. The Giles CLP government increased the value of the voucher by 100% in 2015. The Lawler Labor government increased the value of the voucher by 33.33% in 2024. Or in other terms, since the back-to-school voucher's inception in 2006, 40.88% of the cumulative inflation that occurred whilst the Territory had a Labor government. In that time, Labor have increased the value of the voucher by 83.33%, and 8.21% of the cumulative inflation that occurred whilst the Territory had a CLP government. In that time, the CLP have increased the value of the voucher by 100%. Therefore, it is the CLP that has delivered the largest real value increase in the back-to-school voucher. In conclusion, Opposition Leader Selena Uibo's post is misleading because only one of these vouchers was introduced by Labor,